Dana, we are talking about a film that is being released 3.5 years after the cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was shot and killed. This is something, though, that was part of a legal settlement, right? Her family would benefit from this if it was released, so that's part of why they released it.
The Alec Baldwin Rust, on the set of which the cinematographer was shot and killed and the director was injured, has finally been released. The armourer for that movie, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 18 months. Alec Baldwin, who was holding the gun at the time but unaware that it was loaded, was acquitted with prejudice, meaning it cannot be retried. And the movie is dedicated to Halyna Hutchins, the woman who lost her life.
Coming back to be part of the completion of the filming of Rust after the tragedy that took Halyna's life was the most difficult decision I've ever had to make. For the crew that returned and the new crew members that joined us, we completed Rust to celebrate our friend Halyna, her art, her talent, and the indelible legacy she left behind.
I have seen the movie now and wanted to look past the tragic events which happened on set in 2021 and share my thoughts on the finished picture. The story is about a young boy, Lucas Hollister, who has been raising his younger brother since he was an infant. Lucas gets into an altercation with a boy and accidentally kills his father, for which he is sentenced to be hanged. In comes Harland Rust, Hollister's estranged outlaw grandfather. He takes it upon himself to get the boy across the border where he won't be tracked down by the authorities. And during this journey, they rekindle a family bond.
Now, we're hearing from a lot of critics who, have kind of tepid reviews about this film. One said that it's okay, it's got a lot of tropes, and it's a decent Western.
Having seen a lot of the footage during the trials, my expectation for this film was low. It looked very much like your average video-on-demand Western. But I was very pleased to see that once the footage had been edited and graded, it looks lovely, and the change of cinematographers mid-production is not immediately apparent. The pace is fairly slow, which is normally quite standard for a Western, but I did find myself thinking you could hurry this along a bit, but that might say more about me than the film. I certainly think it could have been under 2 hours, rather than the 2 hours and 20 minutes that it is. The Lucas Hollister actor, Patrick Scott McDermott, was a replacement for the first actor, Brady Noon, who had aged out of the role in the 2 years hiatus in filming. McDermott does a solid job as the young felon, but doesn't have much in the way of on-screen chemistry with Alec Baldwin.
Now, let's talk about Joel Souza. He's the director in this film. He was also shot in the shoulder, the same bullet that killed Halyna Hutchins. He told The Hollywood Reporter, talk about the butterfly effect. He says, I wish I never wrote the damn movie. And referencing Baldwin, he went on to say that we're not friends, we're not enemies, there's no relation.
Alec Baldwin shares a story by credit with the director and writer Joel Souza, and this was called a passion project for the actor. But for reasons I think we all understand, Alec Baldwin doesn't look like he wants to be there. At least that's my interpretation of his performance. I'm aware there might be a certain amount of projection in that statement.
Yeah. So the last question about Alec Baldwin. Can you tell us, we know that he's not here at the premiere. I think I hate this question, but I really want to know what's your take on his situation and on the point right now.
I don't want to sound evasive about it. I don't have one. I think, for me, it's about staying positive and moving forward and not letting sort of these things that occurred in the past just take such ownership of me that they sort of rob me of the moment. And I just like to sort of concentrate on what we're doing here and what's to come. I think getting the movie in front of audiences is important. I think getting Halyna's work in front of people is important. And I think I'd like to focus on that.
The movie wears its inspirations on its sleeve and opens with a nod to Sergio Leone's classic dollar movies. Joel Souza is clearly a fan of the genre, but it feels like an imitation of the movies he loves rather than bringing something new to it. All in all, it's a perfectly fine film which has echoes of many other westerns. Personally, it reminds me of John Wayne's True Grit the most. This film probably wouldn't have come to my attention were it not for the tragedy surrounding it. If I'd just seen it on television not knowing anything about it, I would have said, yeah, that was okay, and not thought about it a second time. This film needs to rest for 10 years before it can ever be appraised neutrally, as its making of is more famous than the film itself. In fact, there was a documentary about this movie's production, Last Take, Rust, the Story of Halyna, which was released on Hulu just before this movie was released.
911, what's your emergency? We got two people trapped on a movie star accidentally.
The actor on set, Alec Baldwin, Were you in the room when the lady went? I was shot with the gun, yeah.
Because this movie is never mentioned without also talking about the tragedy, unfortunately including in this video, the audience is forced to ask themselves, was this movie worth the price of a human life? Only when we get away from that will we know how good this film really is. This will most likely be the last video I make on Rust, and that's probably for the best. There is a playlist on my channel where I look at the trials of Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez in some detail. Do check that out if you're interested. If you would like to support me on this channel, you can send me the price of a cup of coffee via this website. Thanks very much. I'm Scott Kingsnorth, and I'm making a movie.